Anger Management, Season 4, Episode 5. Charlie and the Last Temptation of Eugenio. Detailed summary ***. The fifth episode of Season 4 of Anger Management follows Charlie Goodson as he encounters one of the strangest challenges imaginable for a man who has built his life around partying, casual relationships, and emotional chaos. His longtime best party buddy Eugenio has decided to become a priest. For Charlie, this decision is almost impossible to understand. Eugenio has traditionally been one of the people who shares Charlie's appetite for nightlife, alcohol, women, jokes, and irresponsible adventures. The two men have built their friendship around a lifestyle in which having fun is often more important than acting responsibly. When Eugenio suddenly decides that he wants to dedicate himself to religion and become a priest, Charlie sees the decision not as a positive personal transformation, but as the loss of one of his favorite companions. What follows is a ridiculous attempt by Charlie to tempt Eugenio back into his old lifestyle, creating a conflict between friendship, temptation, personal change, and Charlie's inability to accept that someone close to him might genuinely want a different life. Charlie Goodson is a man who has always struggled with change. Although he presents himself as confident and independent, Charlie often becomes uncomfortable when the people around him make decisions that alter the familiar structure of his life. He likes predictable relationships because they allow him to know what to expect. His friendship with Eugenio is particularly comfortable because the two men understand one another's weaknesses. They do not need to explain themselves. They can meet for drinks, talk about women, make jokes, and immediately return to the same routine they have followed for years. Eugenio becoming a priest threatens that arrangement. At first, Charlie reacts with disbelief. He cannot imagine that Eugenio could sincerely want to give up the lifestyle they have shared. Charlie assumes there must be some temporary explanation. Perhaps Eugenio is going through a phase, perhaps he is trying to impress someone, or perhaps he simply needs to be reminded how much fun his old life used to be. Charlie therefore decides that his friend's religious transformation can be reversed if he applies enough pressure. This is where the episode's central comedic premise develops. Charlie begins treating Eugenio's decision as if it were a personal challenge. Instead of respecting his friend's choice, Charlie becomes determined to tempt him back toward partying. He sees himself as the person who knows Eugenio best, and therefore believes that he knows exactly what Eugenio needs. The irony is that Charlie's confidence blinds him to the possibility that Eugenio may actually have changed. Charlie has spent his entire adult life surrounded by temptations. He enjoys alcohol, sex, nightlife, gambling, jokes, and all kinds of irresponsible behavior. To him, these things are not necessarily signs of a damaged life. They are simply ways of having fun. Because Charlie does not see a strong reason to abandon that lifestyle, he struggles to understand why someone else would willingly give it up. Eugenio, however, appears to have reached a different point in his life. He is no longer satisfied with simply repeating the same routine. Becoming a priest represents a desire for purpose, discipline, and a sense of meaning. Charlie interprets this desire as repression. He believes Eugenio is denying his natural personality rather than genuinely changing. The disagreement creates an interesting contrast between the two friends. Charlie is focused almost entirely on immediate pleasure, while Eugenio is thinking about long-term purpose. Neither character is presented as completely right or wrong. The comedy comes from Charlie's inability to understand why someone would choose sacrifice over pleasure. Charlie begins planning ways to tempt Eugenio. He believes that the easiest way to make his friend reconsider his decision is to expose him to the pleasures he has supposedly abandoned. Charlie therefore starts bringing up old memories, old parties, women, drinking, and all the experiences that once made their friendship so entertaining. He expects Eugenio to become nostalgic and eventually return to his old lifestyle. Instead, Eugenio attempts to remain committed to his new path. This frustrates Charlie because the normal tricks no longer work. Eugenio does not respond to temptation in the way Charlie expects. The more Charlie tries to pull him backward, the more determined Eugenio becomes to continue moving forward. Charlie interprets this resistance as evidence that Eugenio needs even more temptation. Rather than recognizing that his friend has made a serious decision, Charlie treats the situation like a competition. This is another example of Charlie's tendency to turn personal problems into challenges that he believes he can solve through persistence. His therapy group quickly notices the problem. Charlie's patients are accustomed to hearing him talk about emotional boundaries, personal responsibility, and respecting other people's choices. They find it amusing that he is now doing the exact opposite. Charlie is trying to control Eugenio's life because he does not like the direction Eugenio has chosen. The patients question Charlie's motives. They suggest that he may not actually be concerned about Eugenio's happiness. Instead, he may simply be afraid of losing his friend. Charlie initially rejects this explanation because he believes his actions are motivated by friendship. However, the more they discuss the situation, the clearer it becomes that Charlie's fear of change is an important part of his behavior. Charlie does not like the idea of his friend becoming unavailable. If Eugenio becomes a priest, their old nights together will disappear. Charlie will no longer have the same partner for parties and reckless adventures. That possibility makes Charlie feel as though he is losing a part of his own identity. This is an important emotional element beneath the comedy. Charlie often behaves as though he does not need anyone, but his friendships are extremely important to him. He may insult his friends, tease them, or encourage them to make terrible decisions. But he becomes uncomfortable when they begin moving away from him. Eugenio's transformation therefore forces Charlie to confront a difficult truth. Friendships can change without necessarily ending. People grow, develop new beliefs, and make different choices. A friendship does not always remain exactly the same. Charlie, however, wants to preserve the relationship by preserving Eugenio's old personality. His attempts to tempt Eugenio become increasingly ridiculous. Charlie creates situations designed to remind Eugenio of the pleasures of his former lifestyle. He encourages him to socialize, brings up women, and tries to make partying seem irresistible. Every time Eugenio resists, Charlie becomes more determined. The comedy comes from Charlie's complete lack of subtlety. He is not capable of simply asking Eugenio what he wants. Instead, he tries to manipulate the situation. His approach is similar to the way he sometimes handles romantic relationships. He assumes that if he can create the right circumstances, he can control the outcome. Eugenio's decision to become a priest also creates an opportunity for Charlie to examine his own beliefs. Charlie is not a particularly religious man, and the idea of devoting one's life to religion seems strange to him. He believes that people should enjoy themselves while they can. Eugenio's decision therefore challenges Charlie's basic philosophy. Charlie asks himself why anyone would voluntarily give up sex, drinking, parties, and other pleasures. He sees these things as fundamental parts of being alive. Eugenio sees them as distractions from something more meaningful. Their disagreement becomes a humorous philosophical debate between immediate gratification and long-term purpose. The therapy group enjoys watching Charlie struggle with this issue. They point out that Charlie's definition of happiness is not universal. What makes Charlie happy may not make Eugenio happy. Charlie wants everyone around him to share his idea of a good life, but people have different values. This realization is particularly difficult for Charlie because he has always been comfortable assuming that he knows what is best for other people. His career as a therapist reinforces that tendency. He spends his days giving advice, identifying psychological patterns, and explaining why people behave the way they do. When someone makes a decision that Charlie does not understand, his instinct is to analyze it and correct it. The problem is that Eugenio is not asking for therapy. He is making a personal choice. Charlie therefore has to learn that understanding another person's motivations does not give him authority over their decisions. Jennifer also provides an important perspective on Charlie's behavior. She understands that Charlie often becomes controlling when he fears losing someone. She knows that his jokes and confidence can hide insecurity. Jennifer recognizes that Charlie's attempt to save Eugenio may actually be about Charlie himself. Charlie dislikes hearing this because it means his motivations are less noble than he wants to believe. He wants to see himself as a loyal friend fighting to bring Eugenio back to the person he used to be. But if he is honest, he is also fighting to protect his own lifestyle. This distinction becomes increasingly important as the episode progresses. Charlie must decide whether being a good friend means encouraging Eugenio to return to the old life or supporting Eugenio's new direction, even if it makes Charlie's own life less entertaining. Initially, Charlie chooses temptation. He believes that Eugenio will eventually realize that being a priest is too restrictive. Charlie tries to demonstrate that the old lifestyle is still available and that Eugenio does not have to give it up. Eugenio, however, begins showing genuine commitment to his new path. He does not seem to be simply pretending. His decision has given him a sense of purpose that he did not have before. He wants to become a better version of himself, and that desire is something Charlie cannot easily dismiss. The episode therefore creates a contrast between external temptation and internal motivation. Charlie can provide every possible distraction, but temptation only works when a person still wants the thing being offered. If Eugenio genuinely no longer wants his old lifestyle, Charlie cannot force him back into it. This is an important lesson for Charlie. Throughout his life, he has often assumed that people can be manipulated through pleasure, fear, or emotional pressure. Eugenio demonstrates that personal conviction can be stronger than temptation. Charlie becomes frustrated because he cannot find a way to win. He wants Eugenio to admit that he was wrong, but Eugenio does not need Charlie's approval. This makes the situation even more difficult for Charlie. The more Charlie pushes, the more obvious it becomes that he is crossing a boundary. His attempts to influence Eugenio begin looking less like friendly persuasion and more like an unwillingness to respect another person's choice. His patients confront him about this. They remind Charlie that therapy is supposed to help people make decisions for themselves, not make decisions for them. Charlie has spent years telling his patients that they need to take responsibility for their own lives. Now he is refusing to allow Eugenio to do exactly that. Charlie reluctantly begins to understand the contradiction. He may not agree with Eugenio's decision, but he cannot demand that Eugenio live according to Charlie's preferences. At the same time, the episode does not completely reject Charlie's concerns. It is possible that Eugenio is using religion to escape problems rather than confronting them. Charlie's suspicion that Eugenio may be making an extreme decision is not entirely unreasonable. People sometimes make dramatic lifestyle changes because they are unhappy, guilty, or searching for direction. This ambiguity makes the story more interesting. Charlie is wrong to manipulate Eugenio, but his questions about whether Eugenio is genuinely prepared for such a major life change are understandable. The real issue is not whether Eugenio should become a priest. The issue is whether the decision is genuinely his. Eventually, Charlie has to accept that Eugenio's choice belongs to Eugenio. If the decision turns out to be a mistake, Eugenio will have to learn from it. Charlie cannot protect his friend from every possible mistake. This is another recurring lesson in anger management. Trying to control other people often creates more problems than it solves. Charlie can offer advice, but he cannot force someone else to follow it. The episode also explores Charlie's fear of loneliness. If Eugenio changes, Charlie may lose one of the few people who shares his lifestyle without judgment. Charlie's therapy patients may care about him, but they are still his clients. Jennifer is his ex-wife. His children have their own lives. Eugenio represents a friendship based on shared experiences rather than obligation. Losing that connection would force Charlie to confront the possibility that his own life may need to change too. Instead of adapting to Eugenio's new priorities, Charlie initially tries to drag him backward. It is easier for Charlie to change someone else than to consider changing himself. This is why Eugenio's decision becomes so threatening. It serves as a reminder that people can grow beyond the lifestyles that once defined them. If Eugenio can change, perhaps Charlie could too. Charlie is not ready to face that possibility. His attempts to tempt Eugenio, therefore, become a form of resistance to his own potential growth. By keeping Eugenio unchanged, Charlie can continue believing that his lifestyle is perfectly normal and that there is no reason to reconsider it. The therapy group recognizes this before Charlie does. They encourage him to examine why Eugenio's decision bothers him so much. Charlie initially avoids the question, but eventually realizes that his friend's transformation is forcing him to think about his own life. Charlie may never become religious, and the episode does not suggest that he should. Instead, it suggests that people need the freedom to pursue different forms of meaning. Eugenio's idea of fulfillment is simply different from Charlie's. The episode's humor remains central throughout. Charlie's attempts to tempt a future priest back into partying create numerous absurd situations. His seriousness about the mission makes the comedy even stronger because he behaves as though he is carrying out an important psychological experiment, when he is really trying to convince his friend to go drinking with him. His patients also enjoy the irony of watching their therapist behave irresponsibly. Charlie is constantly exposed as a hypocrite, but the group does not reject him because of it. Instead, his imperfections become part of their shared understanding. By the final portion of the episode, Charlie's determination begins to weaken. He realizes that continuing to pressure Eugenio will only damage their friendship. He may not like the change, but he has to respect it. Eugenio's decision also gives Charlie an opportunity to redefine their friendship. They may no longer party together in exactly the same way, but that does not mean their relationship has to disappear. Genuine friendship can survive differences in lifestyle if both people respect each other's boundaries. Charlie eventually recognizes that being a supportive friend does not mean preventing someone from changing. It means being there even when the change makes things less convenient. This lesson is especially difficult for Charlie because he has spent much of his life equating closeness with shared behavior. If someone is his friend, he expects them to participate in his lifestyle. Eugenio demonstrates that friendship can be based on emotional connection rather than identical habits. The ending, therefore, gives Charlie a small amount of personal growth. He does not suddenly become a model of self-control, but he stops trying so aggressively to change Eugenio. He accepts that his friend has made a serious decision and that he needs to respect it. The episode's title, The Last Temptation of Eugenio, reflects Charlie's role perfectly. Charlie becomes the embodiment of temptation, offering his friend one final chance to return to the life they once shared. But the deeper irony is that Charlie himself is the one who needs to learn something about temptation. He must resist his own desire to control Eugenio. Charlie has to accept that sometimes the hardest thing is not getting what you want, but allowing someone else to make a decision you dislike. His anger comes from feeling that he is losing something, but the healthier response is to acknowledge the loss without trying to reverse it. By the end, Charlie understands that Eugenio's new direction does not necessarily represent a rejection of their friendship. It represents a change in priorities. Charlie can either adapt or allow his fear of change to destroy the relationship. The episode therefore fits naturally into the larger themes of anger management. Charlie is constantly surrounded by people who are trying to change, while he himself often resists change. His career is based on helping people recognize unhealthy patterns, yet his own patterns remain stubbornly persistent. Eugenio's transformation acts as a mirror for Charlie. It shows him that people